Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and it's a blessing to be here with you. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a bunch of things to talk about today, but we're going to talk about national security. We're going to talk about health care. We're going to talk about a few other things. But Trump has announced that he has chosen the architecture for something called the Golden Dome Defense Shield. Now, this is a big deal. Secretary Hegseth was in the White House talking about it. I've got a clip of that. I'm going to play you a little bit of a sneak peek on it. Listen to this.
Mr. President, add this to the long and growing list of promises made and promises kept. Ultimately, this right here, the Golden Dome for America, is a game changer. It's a generational investment in the security of America and Americans. Mr. President, you said we're going to secure our southern border and get 100% operational control after the previous administration allowed an invasion of people into our country.
So that is, again, Secretary Pete Hegseth of the Department of Defense talking about the Golden Dome. And again, we're talking about something President Reagan talked about 40 years ago when he cast a vision for it. And this technology wasn't available at one point, but now it is. And we're literally talking about protecting the United States from cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, whether they're conventional or nuclear. This Golden Dome will protect the United States, the continental U.S., and thanks in large part to the leaders of Space Force and everybody else that's involved in, keeping the homeland safe. So kudos to Secretary Hegseth and El Trompito Donaldus Magnus on that. National security is a very big thing, and I want to spend some time talking about that because Rand Paul was out there today voicing some concerns about Tulsi Gabbard being spied on by federal agents during this most recent Trump campaign less than a year ago. And, of course, this, I don't believe that that's standard operating procedure, but you never know, right? You got to find out what's going on. So we're going to do that in a little bit. We're going to bring in Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I should probably say it. I do a little bit of a Gorka impression. Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's got a great voice, right? Dr. Gorka will be joining us in a little bit. He is Deputy Assistant to the President and, of course, the Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council in the White House. And we're going to have some discussion about that stuff. And Gorka, he's out there in the media. He's a media guy, after serving in the first Trump administration. But he was also doing a one-on-one with Politico not that long ago, a few days ago, and got into a big tit for tat over they were in a tizzy, of course, defending terrorists, something that the Democrats love to do. So we're going to talk to him about that and national security and so many other issues. And I'm looking forward to that conversation. So keep it locked right here for that. But we're also going to have some conversation about the latest with vaccines, the latest with the vaccine mandates that once existed and don't exist, as well as so much more. But I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to talk to you about C. Crane, right? Because so many of you struggle listening to get good reception to this show and others in your home. The Wi-Fi radio, it's called the CC Wi-Fi 3 Internet Radio from C. Crane. That's the answer. It's a very special device, and it'll connect you to the Internet. And once you're connected, you're ready to go. You've got about 30,000 radio stations at your fingertips. No static, no fading, and, of course, you can listen to this show. Very, very top-notch audio, voice-focused audio. It surpasses anything you've got on your smartphone. Plus, there's no need to sign into any apps. You don't have to worry about additional monthly fees or eavesdropping, pop-up ads, none of that. Plus, you get a full-size remote control, so finding whatever you want to listen to has never been easier. Plus, it doubles as a Bluetooth speaker. So your favorite music, podcast, check, you got it. Now, order the C. Crane Wi-Fi 3 at 800-522-8863, 800-522-8863, or go to the website, ccrane.com/rich. That's CCRANE.com/rich. And use my name, RICH, at checkout for 10% off orders that are over $75. So keep it locked right here, because while you're not getting any spying on your Sea Crane, we're going to talk about the spying that happened to Tulsi Gabbard. We're going to talk about the Golden Dome and everything else that the National Security Team is planning on doing to correct the record at the White House. And we're going to do that with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President, calling us from the White House momentarily.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue the conversation, and right now we're going to continue it with Deputy Assistant to the President, Senior Director for Counterterrorism on the National Security Council, Dr. Seb Gorka. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
You bet. So I want to get into a few things with you because, of course, national security, a big and important topic. And we've seen so many things happening with this Trump administration that it's kind of like a whirlwind, right? There's something new happening every single day. Today, the DOD announcing the Golden Dome defense system, as well as so many other initiatives. So I'd like to start there, if you don't mind. And I can't remember a time in recent history where we were talking about bolstering national security here at home. Do you?
Well, no, because the people in charge were Democrats who treated our enemies like friends and betrayed our actual friends. I mean, what kind of person dismantles the border and then decides to give literally billions of dollars to Iran, which is sworn to destroy America, and then withdraws from Afghanistan at the cost of 13 of our warfighters being murdered by an ISIS suicide bomber? So, the difference couldn't be more stark. And you saw the president at that base during his Middle East trip talk about how we have your back. And, we love the warfighters. We love our LEOs, our law enforcement officers, our EMTs. If you are standing on the wall protecting the rest of America, President Trump has your back. It's really quite that simple.
100%. And I love the fact that we're actually doing something to protect the homeland, from securing the border to instituting this Golden Dome missile defense system. I think it's hopefully it's something we'll never need, but something that I'm really glad that we're going to have. Now, talking about the border, and you were, in a dust up recently with Tasha Burns talking about the due process issue. And I think this is going to continue to come up because, like you mentioned, Democrats seem to be absolutely in love with all of our enemies, whether it's MS-13, whether it's Tren de Aragua, you name it. If it's an enemy of the United States, the Democrats are in love with them. And I can't imagine why they don't understand this concept that they don't get the same type of due process when they're being labeled a member of a foreign terrorist organization. What say you?
Well, it's really it's a red herring. It's just it's a shiny object. Look over here, not over there. The due process is when the president designated the 6 cartels and the 2 crime gangs as FTOs, as foreign terrorist organizations. From that point onward, if you are a member of that entity, you are a terrorist and you are to be removed from the country. And with regards to this individual from Maryland who is a member of MS-13, there really couldn't be more due process, because twice an immigration judge said, you are here illegally and you must leave the country. Then he gets designated as a member of MS-13, which means by U.S. code he is a terrorist. So it's just lies, and more lies. But where you see it for yourself, it's now gone viral. That clip of me at the Politico event. You have the chief White House political correspondent for this gutter press trash Politico, who's actually trying to argue with me live on television that the MS-13 individual is the person we have to protect, not his victims. Go watch the body cam footage when that illegal immigrant who was found driving a vehicle stashed full of other illegal immigrants without even a driving license. So he's caught red-handed human trafficking in the country. And whose side are Politico on? Oh, of course, on the side of the wife-beating human trafficker. That's all you need to know.
Folks, we're on with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, currently serving as Senior Director for Counterterrorism for the National Security Council. And, of course, he's a Deputy Assistant to President Trump. And Dr. Gorka, there's an article out today about now DNI Gabbard, then I guess surrogate for candidate Trump, being surveilled during the campaign. And I guess my question to you is this regular standard operating procedure, or is this something that we should be concerned about?
Well, it absolutely was under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration. Right now, we are finishing the new U.S. counterterrorism strategy for the president, and one of my key goals in that, in addition to what we've been doing for the last 115 days, which is killing jihadis, is to rip politics out of the function of counterterrorism in the United States. So the idea that the FBI not only surveilled Tulsi Gabbard, but the idea that they were monitoring Catholics in Virginia because they went to Latin Mass, or using the federal sky marshals to also surveil innocent Americans because they happen to be simply in Washington, D.C. on January the 6th. That's police state tactics. But it's not just these incidences. Can we just remember what happened to the leader of the opposition, the then former president? President Trump has his residence raided at gunpoint by the FBI, who bring props. Remember those photographs? We now know. We have the affidavits. We have the 302s. They brought those so-called classified document cover sheets to Mar-a-Lago. They snuck them in. Then they put them on the floor. Then they took photographs of the top secret cover sheets and then leaked them to the Washington Post and the mainstream legacy media. I mean, this is when these are police state tactics, but with the right people in the National Security Council, with Cash at the FBI, with Pam at the DOJ, with John and Tulsi running the intelligence community, we are going to rip politics out of the counterterrorism and intelligence structures and the federal law enforcement, because we cannot allow the most powerful tools we have to be used as political weapons.
I agree with that 100%. And it seems like there's, very little headway being made on that, but little, I'll take what we can get with regard to the American public learning a little bit more. I think over the weekend there was some talk about the fact that Democrats are now admitting that they used lawfare to try and stymie President Trump's campaign. Now we're finding out about this. Do you believe that this is a permanent change? And I guess maybe that's a pie in the sky kind of question, but I know that, while there's this administration, we can rest assured you guys are on your game doing the right thing. And whatever we can codify, we can codify. But who's to say moving forward, the swamp just doesn't wait out the Trump administration? What are you doing to safeguard the future of America?
Things I'm not really prepared to talk about right now. I'll just, explain the tool we have. There is a statute in the U.S. Code called corruption under the color of law, which sounds a bit weird, but it means when an official uses the authorities they have in law enforcement or intelligence to denude an innocent American citizen of their civil rights without a predicate. That abuse under the color of law is what these people committed, and let me just say that's a very important statute, and I'll leave it at that.
Outstanding. Fair enough. Folks, we're on with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. And Doc, in the couple of minutes that we have remaining, what are some of the additional top priorities you have coming out of your office as Senior Director for Counterterrorism?
Well, let me put it in a broader context, because this really is a team effort. So, number one, we have to deal with the fact that, upward of 20 million illegals were let into this country without any kind of vetting. And I mean no vetting. So the first thing we have to do, and God bless Tom Homan, Governor Noem, Stephen Miller, is identifying the worst of the worst and getting them deported to the tune of, more than 200,000 already. And that Supreme Court decision just yesterday was, amazing in terms of, the others who will be stripped of their fake refugee status. So, number one, getting those out of the country who were allowed in here by Kamala when she dismantled the border. Number two, and you've seen this, the mainstream media won't tell you this, we have gone back to the rules of engagement for high-value targets in the jihadi organizations that we had under the first Trump administration. So we are stacking them like cordwood. We've killed more than 83 high-value targets from groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda in just the last 115 days. So, the ones Biden refused to kill for 4 years are now being given a permanent dirt nap. On top of that, we're focusing back on those partners and countries who can assist us, especially in the Middle East and elsewhere, because, the president was elected on no new wars, no forever wars, no stupid wars. So, we will kill bad guys when they are a threat to Americans in America or those stationed abroad. But in the meantime, we're going to help others suppress the threats in their region, because we're not interested in regime change, but we're interested in decapitating the priority one threat groups.
Outstanding. Folks, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President, Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council in the White House. I want to thank you, sir, for being with us and for giving us this update. Where do people find you nowadays that you're in public life?
Just on my social media, so at Seb Gorka on X, Sebastian_Gorka on Instagram, also on Facebook, just, the usual places, and of course, make sure you're following the President and all of our colleagues in the Trump administration on Truth Social and everywhere else.
Outstanding. Well, keep up the good work. Godspeed to you, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate your time.
God bless. Thank you, buddy.
You bet. And amigos, we come back. Your thoughts, your calls, reactions, and so much more to discuss. Don't go anywhere.
Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
The U.S. Senate passed a proposal today to eliminate taxes on tips in a unanimous vote. It would create a new tax deduction worth up to $25,000 for tips. The bill now heads to the House. Parts of the No Tax on Tips Act were already included in the House's mega budget bill that is currently being reviewed.
Now, that mega budget bill is known as One Big Beautiful Bill. One Big Beautiful Bill. But the No Tax on Tips Act is a standalone bill by Jackie Rosen out of Nevada. And she was applauding the passage of that. Listen to this.
I just want to say this is great news for Nevada. Our bill just passed. Our hospitality and service staff, they're working harder than ever while being squeezed by rising costs. And this bill, it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's going to offer immediate financial relief while the Senate continues to work to lower costs and find other avenues of relief for hardworking families.
Now, that's not just good news for Nevadans. That is good news for all Americans. And again, this is all, that's what just passed in the Senate. That's going to make its way to the House. Some of this is a little bit duplicative because it's part of the big, beautiful bill. Now, Caroline Leavitt weighed in on that, which did pass the Budget Committee yesterday. Everybody was on board. Check this one out.
The One Big Beautiful Bill passed the House Budget Committee last night, bringing it one step closer to final passage. The One Big Beautiful Bill is perfectly named because it represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver on the Make America Great Again agenda responsible for President Trump's landslide victory on November 5th. The America First policies in this bill are the reason why Republicans currently have the majority in Congress right now. Passing this bill is what voters sent Republicans to Washington to accomplish. And that's why it's essential that every Republican in the House and the Senate unites behind President Trump and passes this popular and essential legislative package. This bill will be the single most pro-small business, pro-family, and pro-American worker legislation ever. This bill will give Americans the largest tax cuts in our nation's history. When Republicans pass the bill, Americans will be keeping more of their hard-earned money and taking home much bigger paychecks.
So that's Caroline Leavitt talking about the way this will affect Americans and their paychecks. Now, President Trump was reiterating how important this bill is. This bill is incredibly important for Americans. And he also spoke about the tax impact. But I want to talk about the importance of it first. Listen to this.
It's very important. It's important for the country. It's not important for me. It's important for the country. This is the greatest bill that will ever, I think it's the most important bill this country just about has ever done in terms of size and scope. That's why we call it the great, big, beautiful deal. I mean, it really is. The bill is, I think it's going to be one of the most important. It's the biggest tax reduction in history, biggest regulation reduction in history. Incredible for Medicaid, for Medicare. The only thing, we're going to leave it exactly as it was, other than for obviously waste, fraud, and abuse. We're strengthening it. We're going to make these things even stronger. The Democrats are going to destroy Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And we're going to keep them, but even make them stronger.
Now, President Trump was making these comments after he met with Republicans regarding the passage of the big, beautiful bill. And him doubling down on why this is a great, big, beautiful deal, right? And why it needs to be protected and why Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security need to be protected from Democrats. And when he says they're going to destroy it, it's because these programs are already on a collision course to implode because of the waste, fraud, and abuse, because of how they've been misused over the years. Now, something Caroline Leavitt alluded to and President Trump has talked about frequently, and the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries and his ilk, they're constantly talking about this, is how this would be a huge tax increase if the Trump tax cuts don't get re-signed. If this big, beautiful bill doesn't pass, Americans will see a huge tax cut. Now, President Trump starts his comments here on Capitol Hill this morning after meeting with the Republicans regarding how he felt about the meeting. And he says the meeting was full of love. Listen to this.
This was a meeting of love. There's great unity in that room. And it's the biggest tax cut in American history. And if it doesn't pass, everybody's going to get a 68% tax increase. I don't know how you beat that. Also, one other thing. You're going to get an 85% reduction in drugs. 85% reduction. Not 0.25%, not an increase. The Democrats, you're going to pay 25% more for drugs. With me, because of what I've instituted, favored nations, the people of America, and it's about time, going to get an 85% reduction. They're going to be paying the lowest price in the world.
The lowest price in the world. Now, speaking of healthcare and the World Health Organization has made more steps towards their pandemic treaty. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the latest with vaccines, because there's some news on that. There's also a big purchase of a DNA company. We're going to talk about that in the next hour, so keep it locked right here for that. But staying focused on President Trump and his comments on the big, beautiful bill, and today, no tax on tips passing, the Senate making its way over to the House, where I suspect it will also win, because who's going to get in the way of that? Obviously not anybody with any political sense. People want that, right? If you're a restaurant worker, if you're anybody, I was a barber. For years I made money on tips. And I made money on everything, right? I mean, whether it was hair product sales, this, that, whatever. I made all the money. All the money I could make, I made. But tips were a big part of it. And it's why I try to be the best tipper I can be, because people were always very generous to me. And that's a way of life for many people. Now, barbers, depending on how they work, whether it's a booth rental, if they're in a state that permits that, or if they are, doing a commission 60-40 type of deal, they generally earn well, people in the hair business. But some people, like the people that are waiting tables and whatnot, they can also earn really well, but they don't always earn a high dollar amount per hour. Right, in New York City, I think for many years, I don't know what it is now, but for many years it was like $2.35, the minimum wage for servers, because they were expected to pool tips and earn tips and whatnot. So this is, I think, a huge deal. No tax on tips. I can't imagine somebody saying, "Oh my gosh, Orange Man bad. Now he wants me to save money. Now he wants me to keep more of my hard-earned tip money. Unbelievable! I can't stand him. He's horrible for America." I don't think too many people are going to say that. In fact, I think it's going to continue to open up the avenues where he's gaining popularity and gaining support, because Trump has done just that, right? He's got some poll numbers coming in, and his approvals have gone up. Now, of course, the New York Times is saying that his approval going up was really because people aren't paying attention. I would love to argue with them. And I will, right? I will say absolutely not. It's because people are paying attention and they realize that all sorts of people, doesn't matter if you're what race you're from, but just to make a solid point, just like in the election, and just like many of the people that benefit from no tax on tips, many of them are minorities. And minority men and women within the Hispanic community, men and women in the African American community, Asian American community. I think these people have realized a while back, and continue to realize more and more each day, that they are benefiting from what's going on in Donald Trump's presidency. And they were not benefiting from what happened in the presidency of Joe El Baboso Biden. I think it's really that simple. No matter what the media comes out and tells you and tries to gaslight you and tell you things are horrible, or even some of the callers to this show who try to make things up, ultimately, I think people see the proof is in the pudding. If you're going to keep your tips and not have to pay tax on that because of, it's not considered part of your income, that is huge. That is huge. So, again, kudos to the United States Senate for passing the bill. Kudos to Jackie Rosen, who sponsored the bill with Senator Ted Cruz, Senator from Nevada. And, of course, kudos to El Trompito for pioneering this from the campaign trail. Now, I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back. A couple of thoughts and opinions from you all. We the people, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So James Comey was on television yesterday, and I wanted to play this last night, but, I was on the fence about playing it, but I've got it for you, and I want you to hear this. This is why he posted the picture. Listen to this.
We were walking on the beach. We went to the beach to prepare for this week, which was the launch of my book, and to think about the book and to prepare to answer questions about it. And we were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, "Why would someone put an address in the sand?" And I said, "I don't know." And we stood over it, and I said, "I think it's some kind of political message." And she said, 86, when I was a server, she did a lot of work in restaurants, meant to remove an item from the menu when you ran out of ingredients. And I said, well, to me, as a kid, it always meant to leave a place, to ditch a place. I said, that's really clever. So then she said, you should take a picture of that. And I did. And I posted it on my Instagram account and thought nothing more of it until I heard through her that people were saying it was some sort of a call for assassination, which is crazy. But I took it down. Even if I think it's crazy, I don't want to be associated with violence of any kind.
So that's James Comey. And again, in mafia circles, not that you and I frequent those often, but it meant to drive somebody 8 miles out and bury them 6 feet deep. Kind of like take them out to the Meadowlands and put them in the ground 6 feet under. You know what I mean? You want, I should. Anyway, James Comey, I think is I guess the most sophisticated way I can put this in Spanish is tremendo pendejo. But I digress. This is what he had to say. And all I can say is this guy is an expert at walking up to the line and not crossing it. I don't believe he'll be prosecuted. I do believe that he is, like he said, trying to promote his book. He wants to be in the headlines so he can talk about all of this and get all the free press that goes with it, because otherwise they may not want to talk about him and his silly book, right? And I say silly book because I don't even know if the book's like autobiographical. I think it's some sort of like thriller, like a fiction, one of those loosely based on real life type of things, like those guys that leave the CIA and write spy novels but aren't about what they really did, kind of that type of thing. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that was his previous book. I'm really not following that closely. But I want to get your thoughts, calls, and reactions on this and everything else we've been talking about. Plus, by the way, LaMonica McIver, Congresswoman from New Jersey, has been officially charged by the United States Department of Justice with the assault that was caught on tape of her shoving ICE agents around as they attempted to gain entry without an appointment to a secure ICE facility. So we'll talk about that momentarily. But quickly, let's go to the phones. Eduardo calling us from Tampa, Florida, listening to richvaldez.com. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. Well, I heard one time on Sebastian Gorka's radio show that the Republican Party does not have any friends. So we definitely need to be aggressive with future bills. I myself would have made the decision to detain Mr. Comey for questioning to get more answers from his
well, they did. The Secret Service brought him in and he was interviewed.
Yeah. I kind of think he's pulling our chain, but it'd be kind of fun to detain him, just like.
Well, I don't know. My point is, if you or me, and I hate to be put in this situation, but it's the reality. If you and me were to do this, to go and put seashells and put, 86-46, for Biden, let's just say, FJB, and, let's go Brandon, whatever. And we take a picture of that and we put it on there. And now the left turns around and says, 86-46 means you want to 86 the commander-in-chief, the 46th commander-in-chief. We're going to refer you to the FBI or to the Secret Service for to be vetted to make sure this isn't a threat against the president. And so then we go and we do that and we have our interviews and whatnot. I mean, how much can they possibly do to you for having free speech and saying, I wish this guy weren't around?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just, the Democrats, they definitely want to censor Republicans. I mean, we know that. They don't want to hear they don't believe in open discussion. They want to suppress our viewpoints. So this is ridiculous. But, it happens like that. I mean, the Democrats will lock themselves up to pass a bill. They did this when they were in control. They went down in the chamber and passed bills. So you don't see Republicans doing that. But they get away with that stuff.
Well, John Boehner, again, just to be fair, historically, I think John Boehner, there were times where he was very slow in doing things in Barack Obama's administration. Even Mitch McConnell, one of the few things I give him credit for are some of the things that I think were wise to do to slow walk some of the Obama legislation that would have been detrimental to the country. But I try my best because I realize, politics is a tricky business, and I try my best to always use what if they did that to me as my litmus test. If the roles were reversed, even with this stuff with these foreign terrorist organizations and saying you're with a foreign terrorist organization, right? When Biden did that to parents that were outraged by the woke material that was being taught in Loudoun County schools, and moms were very upset, the FBI issued a threat tag saying that these moms were violent domestic extremists and domestic terrorists. Right? Now, that's awful, and it's wrong, and it should never be done flippantly. I do believe that the cartels and MS-13 and Tren de Aragua especially are foreign terrorist organizations. But we never want to be flippant with those things, because the minute that we are, you get to lose your ability to have due process. And that's the last thing you want, right? We know that those organizations are, in reality, terrorist organizations. But just imagine if you were a Maryland dad, right? Just run-of-the-mill. Imagine it's Eduardo or if it's Rich Valdez. And all of a sudden, Joe Biden's president again, or AOC is president. And she's like, I can't stand that bald guy. And we're going to say he's with MS-13. Look at all those tattoos he has, that tattoo on his arm and the one on his neck. And they try to paint me to be somebody that's related to a foreign terrorist organization. Next thing you know, no due process for me, and they're trying to deport me to San Juan, Puerto Rico. Look, I'm making an extreme example, but that's the way I try to use logic in these situations. And you're right, they don't want to have the debate. They want to shut us down, and I'm making sure that our side is not being like their side. And to date, we haven't been. Eduardo, excellent point. Thank you for the call. Folks, we're coming right back. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. Lots more to discuss depending on what part of the country you're in. You might get me for another hour, maybe another 2 hours. For some of you, this is the end of the road. So to you, I say, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. But for everybody else, I say keep it locked, because we have a lot more to discuss. We're going to talk about the pharmaceutical industry, the state of healthcare in America. I also want to get into what's going on with China, the latest trade deal, and of course, open phones across America. Your calls and more coming up as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And again, if this is the end of the road for you and I tonight, then I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you, America.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? It's Rich Valdez with another hour here. Happy to be with you, blessed to be on this microphone. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and you can always check out what we're doing online at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And I want to get into a bunch of things with you tonight. Of course, we're talking about national security. Make sure you check out the interview with Sebastian Gorka. But we're also going to talk about healthcare, the state of healthcare in the United States. We're also going to talk about what's the latest on the deal with China and where we expect that to go. But I want to start off with some domestic news because the Congresswoman from New Jersey, LaMonica McIver, she has been charged by the Department of Justice, by the United States Attorney from the District of New Jersey, Alina Habba's office, has brought charges against her and has also simultaneously dropped charges against Newark Mayor Ras Baraka. And I say this is good politics right here, right? This is where the Democrats will try and say they're coming after their political enemies, and they won't be able to, because they'll be able to, the media will have to fact check themselves and say, well, why did you drop the charges against Ras Baraka? And the reason why? He was peaceful. He went very peacefully. Miss McIver, not so peaceful. Now, she had something to say about this. She says if she had to do it all over again, she would. Listen to this.
Would you have done anything differently? No, I would not have. Once again, we showed up there to do a job, Kate. We were there for an oversight visit. We have done this before. Me, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman, and Congressman Rob Menendez was just at a facility just a couple of weeks ago, not too far from this location, where we had an oversight visit, and we were a little bit delayed, but not, confronted or was in the middle of a chaos to do so. I think, number one, we have an obligation to do so. We have to show up and do our jobs.
We have to show up and do our jobs. She says she's not going to roll over, that she's going to do her job no matter what. And I guess her job is to shove ICE agents out of the way. I don't know where that one is in the Constitution, but hey, who am I to argue, right? She's from Jersey. Sometimes us Jersey people are a little hard-headed. Now, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th President of these United States, he weighed in saying this.
Weaponizing with the arrest of a congresswoman, Democratic congresswoman.
Oh, give me a break. Did you see her? She was out of control.
Did you address
those days are over.
The
days of woke. No, I didn't. The days of woke are over. That woman, I have no idea who she is. That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Amen. Praise God. Hallelujah. We need law and order. And listen, I agree. I agree with this. I think that we have to somehow, some way, get back to a place where there is respect for authority, while simultaneously getting back to a place where people in authority take it extremely seriously. And I'm not saying that the ICE agents did not, but I am saying I myself have been in situations with law enforcement that I thought were over the top, and that they definitely weren't being respectful toward me, right? So I think when the police, just like politicians, get carried away, they lack certain training, they're uncouth, and they think that they can treat you any old way, and that you're going to respond in kind every single time. It's not always going to work, right? People are people. And when you treat somebody well, they're usually going to treat you well, usually. When you treat someone poorly, it's likely that they're going to respond poorly. And that's just a fact of life. So I'm not saying that is the norm. I have a lot of respect for law enforcement, and that's probably why I'm making the comments I'm making, because I've got family in law enforcement, and I've been supportive of law enforcement my whole life. And the last thing I want to see is somebody in law enforcement, mistreating a member of the public. And I don't think it happens a lot, but whenever it happens, it shouldn't, right? And I think some people see that and get used to it. Thankfully, I've seen it, and I don't get used to it because I know better, right? I know that that's not the majority of people. That what my nephew just became a state trooper in Tennessee, Highway Patrol. I got nothing but respect for men and women in uniform, and period, right? That's the end of that. And we have to make sure that the same people, politicians like Ms. McIver, take this oath, and they also have to be respectful, right? It's always a two-way street, period. The end. If we allow ourselves, myself included, to be carried away by our emotions of anger, of feeling slighted, of whatever, and responding that way, we'll likely put ourselves in a situation that we'll regret in the future. It's my thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being soft. But either way, she's been charged. Trump weighs in and says she was out of control. I completely agree. She was definitely out of control. And that's something that we're going to see. And Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark, who was arrested, his charges were dropped by the Department of Justice. So curious to see how this plays out. I don't know. I don't know what they're looking for. I don't know if they're looking for a scalp here. I don't know if they're looking to actually take this prosecution to where it leads, or if they're looking for an apology of her to say, you know what, I should not have shoved the iron. But clearly she doubled down. She went in a whole different direction. So she's got whatever's coming her way. She had her chance. Anyway, amigos, we're going to continue the conversation. What's going on in the state of healthcare? RFK Jr. had a hearing today, and he had a lot of things to say regarding the destruction of the health of the American people. And he was going at it with Senator Patty Murray. And I want you to hear this, number 16. Check this out.
I want to point out something, Senator. You presided here, I think, for 32 years. You presided over the destruction of the health of the American people.
Well,
Our people are now the sickest people in the world.
Seriously.
Because you have not done your job.
Seriously. That is an
What have you done about it? What have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Mr. Secretary,
what have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Seriously, Madam
Secretary, I would ask you to hold back and let the senator ask the questions.
Oh, yes. And Senator, please hold back and let the secretary ask the questions, or vice versa. This is, again, kudos to RFK Jr. So many things going on in this world. Big pharma, the establishment in Washington, right? One looking out for the other. And you've got RFK here, this lowly voice in the wilderness, looking out for you and me, the little guy. And I think that's important. And look, these things keep happening no matter where we are. Right? Remember during COVID, there was remdesivir. That was an intravenous antiviral medication that they were using to treat people with severe COVID-19, or treating people with COVID-19 that then became even more severely ill. I don't know which set of facts to go with here, but I remember everybody taking that seemed to end up on a ventilator, and many of them didn't live. But all that being said, the company that makes this drug, Regeneron, part of the big pharma cartel, they purchased a company. Which company? 23andMe. That is the DNA company that was competing with Ancestry.com, where people were finding out, what their roots are, who their biological family people are down the road, who their ancestors are, etc. And I think this is interesting on a number of fronts because, A, you've got Big Pharma now owning your DNA records, right? They bought a company that has these DNA records. And B, they create COVID medicine as well as other, another COVID medicine named Paxlovid. It's in their best interest to look at your DNA profile so they can figure things out and try and sell you stuff, right? If nothing else. This, I think, is, I'm not going to say it's alarming, but it's something where I would have some concern. And if anything, I'd have a lot of questions. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about a lot of the other developments that came out of these hearings on Capitol Hill, as well as some new developments with vaccines that are being reported. So there's plenty to discuss, as well as some updates on gain of function research that Secretary Kennedy alludes to in his testimony earlier today on Capitol Hill. So I want you to keep it locked right here. We're going to come right back and discuss this with somebody who's himself, presided over a number of drug fines, I'm going to call them, that ended up in patents, and has testified as an expert witness on Capitol Hill regarding this and many other issues. Dr. Stephen Quay is going to be joining us, renowned medical researcher. So keep it locked right here, folks. We're coming right back with Dr. Stephen Quay.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Regeneron Pharmaceuticals has agreed to buy a genetic testing firm 23andMe, once valued at $6 billion. The company now being purchased in a bankruptcy deal worth just $256 million after being plagued by privacy and security concerns. This sale would give the biotech company control over the genetic information of more than 15 million customers who sent their saliva through that at-home DNA testing kit, while Regeneron said it'll prioritize the privacy, security, and the ethical use of the 23andMe customer database, adding that it will not use that for research without consent. The purchase is subject to bankruptcy court and regulatory approvals. It is expected to close, though, in the third quarter of this year.
That's a report from the National Desk. And I want to get to the bottom of that, as well as some of what the Secretary of HHS had to say with our guest. Dr. Stephen Quay joins us. He's the founder of Atossa Therapeutics, MD, PhD. drquay.com is his website. Dr. Stephen Quay, welcome back, sir.
Well, it's great to be back, Rich. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank God. Now, I wanted to get your reaction to this because, again, I just thought it was interesting. I remember when they were having those privacy concerns and this company went from being a multi-billion-dollar company to now being sold for $256 million, which I thought you've probably had budgets of that kind of money for certain drugs that you've developed. And I thought that was a very modest price for a company like 23andMe. But I don't know if I should be concerned or if I should be thrilled over Regeneron buying this company and having access to all this information. What are your thoughts?
It's very complex. Number one, very complex. Number two is I am a customer of theirs. One of my hobbies is genealogy, and so I'm doing a lot of different kinds of DNA testing and Y chromosome testing to find my ancestors and things. So look at this technology, like many, many modern things, has both benefits and risks, opportunities, and strengths and that sort of thing. Once you commit to giving your DNA to these companies, the genie's out of the box in some ways. Mm-hmm. They say they're going to protect it. I'm not sure about that. I'm also not quite sure what kind of prejudice you have. I mean, if you know what mutations I have on my Y chromosome, I'm not quite sure how that hurts me or that potentially hurts me. So, we should discuss this, but, I think it's a very interesting situation.
Right. Well, my thought there, and again, like I said, I'm not sure if it's a question or a concern yet, but my thought is you have Regeneron, who's got a couple of different COVID therapies that are out there. And I know there was a lot of, and not particularly them, but Dr. Malone and others who have talked about the delivery method of many vaccines, the mRNA, being ideally used for gene therapy. So I think now that they have all this information on your DNA and your genealogy, if you will, then it puts them in a very good position to do research that you may or may not really have ever signed up for, I guess, by clicking a box saying, sure. I don't think you thought you were selling it to Big Pharma, but you did, in effect. So I guess that's probably where my thought originates from.
Well, but let's be sure we understand how they work and what they do. So your genome has 6 billion letters. So the code of you and me and all your listeners, each code is a little bit different, probably differing in a couple thousand out of the 6 billion. But what you do for the genetic testing or for the disease testing that they do is to analyze what are called SNPs, which are common mutations that a lot of people have with particular diseases. And in that case, there are only 1,000 or 1,500 SNPs. So they know the exact letter I have at, let's say, 1,500 places inside my $6 billion genome. That they don't have all 6 billion letters. They didn't do the test to do that. That's much more expensive, much more difficult. So what they can do with these 1,500 is they can do associations. So they can say, well, here's out of my 15 million people that I have in my database, here's 100,000 who have this particular disease, autism or something, and then they all seem to have the same letter at the same spot. So that begins to tell you where a disease gene is located, though it doesn't tell you much about its action. So it's quite useful for kind of high-level research, but again, I'm not sure what they can do to me or hurt me with having only 1,500 of my 6 billion letters.
Right. Okay. I see. You're saying you don't see much of a downside. And I guess the other part of my question or concern stems from if this were a technology company that were buying, my digital information that I had given, maybe to my bank, and now they bought my bank. And now some company that I didn't want to have my information per se now has it because they own my bank and they have the information. Somebody somewhere, I would suspect, is going to bring an antitrust case somewhere saying this is a monopoly, they've got too much control, this is like Meta owning Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, and going to make a big deal of it. But yet when it's happening in the big pharma world, nobody's bringing such a case. So I guess it's just, me against the man, so to speak. But Dr. Stephen Quay, stick with me. I want to continue the conversation. I appreciate it. And I want to get your thoughts on Secretary Kennedy limiting gain-of-function research, something you and I have talked about extensively in the past. So, amigos, keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back with Dr. Stephen Quay. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And what we're trying to do is eliminate the redundancy. There's no way to govern this agency. This agency has a budget that is comparable to the 6th largest nation in the world. And we have no governance because these are all in silos with their own infrastructure, and we're trying to consolidate them, and that's why they don't work. That's why we throw more and more money every year, and Americans are the sickest people in the world. We spend 2 to 3 times for health care what other nations spend, and we have the worst outcomes on earth. And if somebody does not reorganize this mess, it is going to continue. And we're trying to do it, and we're going to make some mistakes as we do it. But ultimately, I can tell you 4 years from now, the American people are going to be a lot healthier.
Powerful words from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy. And I want to return to our conversation with Dr. Stephen Quay. He's the founder of Atossa Therapeutics. He's a physician researcher. Check him out at drquay.com. Quwa is how you spell Quay. And Dr. Quay, I want to get your take on the size of HHS, the scope of HHS. Do you agree with what Secretary Kennedy is saying, or do you think he's missing the mark?
No, I think this is a remarkable man saying remarkable things at a very important point in time. Now, let me tell you where I'm coming from, right? Because, I came from teaching at Stanford Medical School, and then I went into biotechnology. I've been in biotech for, 3 decades, and I've invented 7 FDA-approved drugs. So I am definitely in the pharmaceutical side of things. But when you're talk about pharma. Health and well, I'm big pharma. Yeah, I need to be bigger pharma, but in any case, I'm a little pharma, but trying to be bigger. But having said that, in terms of public health, what he is saying is exactly right. 70% of diseases are caused by the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the lifestyles that we have, where we don't teach children, we don't teach the children the role of exercise and these sorts of things in adults, and then habits develop. So he is very spot on, and there's so much room for improvement here with obesity rates in children. And to me, it's amoral to be proposing a drug for obesity in a child, which is going to have so many detrimental effects, rather than having, a proper exercise program, proper food portions, and those sorts of things. These weight loss drugs are going to be a crisis in the following fashion. When you lose 40% of your body weight on these drugs, you cannot help but lose half of that loss is muscle mass. So you lose your muscle, you just can't help that. When you then go off the drugs and go up in weight, you now have new weight. You're back to the same weight, but you have 40% less muscle. So if you wanted to invest in the future of these drugs, you would invest in track chairs, because people are not going to have mobility if they take these drugs, they lose weight, they go off the drug, and then they go back. And so there's so many ways he is right. Sorry to sound like I'm on a soap opera, but it's so important, all the words he's saying.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're bringing up some really important public health concerns over weight loss drugs, which I think are changing the landscape of how deadly obese this country was prior to them. But of course, with the advent of these drugs, these GLP-1s, there's also the caveat of muscle loss and whatnot. But moving on from that, because something else that he said just a few days earlier, Secretary Kennedy, was something that I've heard you say as well. He said it a little bit differently, but you've been pretty staunchly against gain of function research, in particular with the COVID vaccine, making it more lethal, from our previous conversations. And that came up in a previous hearing that Secretary Kennedy spoke at, and I have a clip of that. Listen to this.
We've also proposed a methodology for regulating and for determining what is dangerous gain of function and what is legitimate scientific investigation, and how to bring the public into that debate, which I think, as you point out, is absolutely critical. That is where we messed up last time. And as you know, we have some of the Democrats here who are, talking about the great science from NIH, but now we have a major agency, intelligence agency, the CIA, the FBI, the DOE, and the State Department have all agreed that NIH research almost certainly led to the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So that's not the kind of the result that we should be allowing or enabling. And we're going to end that now.
So that's Secretary Kennedy again on gain of function research. Your thoughts, Dr. Quay?
Well, I've just finished a 4-year project of a book called The Code as Witness. You can pre-order it on Amazon. It'll be available in the fall. But I look very carefully and very scientifically, without a political bent, at this pandemic that just killed probably 20 million people in the world, $30 trillion in damage. And it's absolutely clear it came from a laboratory. It's absolutely clear it was manipulated in that laboratory in a way that's called gain of function, where it was taught how to grow on human cells, it was taught how to spread very rapidly between people, and it was taught how to avoid to make it asymptomatic, that is about 40% of the cases are asymptomatic, and how to avoid making antibodies against it. So all of these features of it led to the fact that a single laboratory accident in China in the fall of 2019 led to literally every person in the world getting this virus and the consequences downstream. I've looked at all 200 papers on gain-of-function research, and I found not a single one that had a useful benefit for public health purposes. So while Secretary Kennedy talks about controlling it or nuancing the gain-of-function research, it's simply much easier just to simply stop it. There are 64 things, viruses, bacteria, fungi, that kill people in a very high rate, and they kill animals at a very high rate, and we simply shouldn't be working on those and changing the genetics of those in any way, shape, or form. And that's one of the strong missions I have for my life, because I can tell you that this is a 1% lethal virus. They're currently working on 17%, 45%, and 70% lethal viruses, and a 10% lethal virus will wipe us out and take us back to 1850 in terms of quality of life.
How realistic is that in our future?
Oh, it's very realistic. As I said, they are currently working on viruses that are over 10% lethal. The way I came at that concept of what will happen to civilizations, I looked at 4 important supplies: energy from the ground to the pump, food from the field to the market, police and fire, and then hospitals, nurses, and doctors. If 10% of any of those break, that is, people die or sick or can't continue, we will degrade to 1850, and we won't have energy, and we'll have chaos. It's a very bad look, and it will take decades to even maybe a century to return to where we are now. So I think it's very important for everyone there to call their representatives, tell them that there's bills now circulating in the House, Senate to ban this research. I've helped write some of them with Senator Marshall and Senator Paul in the Senate there. So it's important. It's really important, because we want to have a world left for our grandkids, and this kind of research, which has no benefit. It's exciting for these people. I mean, I can't get into the psyche of these people. I have some ideas about it, but it's psychopathy, if you really want to know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like Dr. Evil. Folks, we're on with Dr. Stephen Quay, drquay.com. And, Doc, let everybody know, again, the title of your forthcoming book that's coming out this fall and how they can get a copy.
It's called The Code as Witness. And what I do is I treat the virus as the storyteller, and literally, what does it say about where it came from, how it was made, and what it was designed to do? And then I have a whole section on a blueprint for legislation policies that will help us from having it ever happen again. So it took longer than it should have, but it'll be out this fall. You could pre-order it on Amazon, and I think it's quite important.
Outstanding. Folks, check out the book. Make sure you get a copy early, and I'm sure we'll have Dr. Quay back on to talk about it closer to its release date. Dr. Quay, I appreciate you. You're a gentleman and a scholar and a patriot. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Rich. Take care.
You bet. Likewise. God bless. And amigos, we continue with your thoughts, calls, and reactions to everything we're talking about. Big Pharma and HHS and 23andMe and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdez with an S.
Did you have any regret about posting the picture?
Well, I regret the distraction and the controversy around it. But again, it's hard to have regret about something that, even in hindsight, looks to me to be totally innocent for the reasons you said. But yeah, I didn't have a gut check. In the Trump era, I've been investigated a lot, audited a lot. And so it's not my first rodeo. I'm in some strange way the relationship he can't get over, maybe because I've lived a happy, productive life since leaving. But this has just been a distraction in that life.
Does anybody believe a word of what James Comey's saying? Because I don't believe it. This guy is as dishonest as he is tall. He's been living a happy life, and that's why. You think Trump's mad at you for living a happy life? What a pendejo. Anyway, let's go to Mike calling us from Fairfax, Virginia, WMAL. Mike, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, good to talk to you.
Yes, sir. Likewise.
You know, on James Comey, I would love to hear the interview between the Secret Service, the FBI, and James Comey and see how intimidated the agents are that are having to talk to him, knowing that he's in the SES and can control their retirement.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's in the SES at all. I think he's retired completely now. But I think ultimately, whether they're intimidated or not, I think it's probably sounded exactly like what you just heard on television. Because that's how these guys operate. You know, I spent a little time in state government, and I can tell you, these people were experts at being robots. The deep state is run by a bunch of robots. And I don't mean they're real robots. I mean, these are robotic people, right? If you ask me how I was doing, I would usually tell you the truth. Man, traffic sucked on a turnpike. There was an upside-down truck. There were chickens running all across the turnpike. Like, I would tell you what's going on. These people would give you the same canned response for everything. Oh, very well. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Everything was so scripted. These people would never put anything in an email besides yes or no. They picked up their desk phone for absolutely everything. Everything was done in person. If you wrote a memo to file, it was likely because you expected a lawsuit and you were doing some sort of CYA or, there was going to be, some sort of complaint being made. Everything was so shady. Everybody spoke in code all the time. And that's the deep state, right? It's the administrative state. It's the career employees that have made a career out of working in government. And I'm not trying to villainize people that work in government. I am trying to give my observation on the people that I worked alongside. And James Comey is one of those. When he sits there and says, I didn't have a gut check. I didn't. He's talking to intent because they have to be able to prove intent. That he intended to alert people to 8647. And if they can't prove his intent, then he sounds like a blundering idiot on television. He's going to sound like the same blundering idiot when he goes in there to talk about whatever, saying the same types of things that you heard him say right now, saying, yeah, well, under this president, I've been interviewed many, many times. I've been very investigated here. And in some ways, unlike the relationship he can't get over, right? Trying to take a dig at Trump when in reality, we know it's Comey that stepped outside the bounds here. It wasn't Trump that did any of that, right? Trump was incredibly gracious to Comey. It was Comey that decided to do the famous Comey memo with the Hillary Clinton stuff days before the election. He's the one who did all this stuff. Trump was nothing but nice to him, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think James Comey, my opinion, is that he is a fake, he is a phony, he is a fraud. He's an expert at walking right up to the line without crossing it. Just like so many other deep staters that are out there, this is what they do, and they are very good at it. Eric Swalwell, Adam Schiff, what's his name? Dan Goldman. I mean, these guys are terrific, right? Representative Plaskett. This is what they do. It's like they all went to the same school and learned how to do the same dirty tricks. Anyway, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Fairfax, Virginia, WMAL. Let us continue. I want to go to Texas. Quay is calling us from Fort Worth, Texas. KLIF, great station. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich, I wanted to talk to you about a couple things. So the first one was no taxes on tips. I'm all for that, and I think it's great and all. But I really want to know how it all works, because if this was Trump term 1, I'll be all for it. But now that we're in Trump term 2 and it's after COVID, I think across the nation, service has gone down. And to be rewarding them with a tax break for giving terrible service seems like we're incentivizing the wrong behavior, if you know what I mean. And
no, I don't know what you mean, only because tips are voluntary, right? So if you're giving a tip, they just don't have to pay tax on it. If you don't want to give a tip, you don't give a tip. So I don't think anybody's giving any extra tip. And if what you're saying is accurate, that we're not during the COVID era, then we're using these services that much less, and they're getting less tips. So they're only going to pay taxes on the tips they're actually getting. If that's the way it works now. So if there are no taxes, they're just going to keep the money that they're getting on those tips. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. The other thing was going to be the salt tax. I don't understand why we're trying to raise the salt tax up to 30%, or I'm sorry, 30,000, when the average annual income nationwide is only 60,000. So why are we trying to raise it to half? Nobody pays 50% taxes, only making 60,000 a year.
Right. Well, I think the push there is the SALT deduction, right? The state and local tax deduction. People are hoping to get a tax deduction so that it can offset some of these things, because there are some states that are afraid that they're going to get screwed. Now, there's also others that are saying we're going to need to make some money somehow. Of course, there's always somebody trying to get a tax, but I think the big argument here is a deduction that people are trying to work on increasing. But as we get more on that, I'll bring you up to speed on it. I'm no expert on that stuff. Quay, thanks for the call from Fort Worth, Texas. KLIF. Got a pause right here. Coming right back. Ohio, California, Arizona, Idaho. Stay right there.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go. Streaming the show from Sedona, Arizona on KFNX.com. Let's go to Pat, Sedona, Arizona. Go for it, brother.
Hey, my friend. How you doing? So good to hear from you. Happy
Likewise.
birthday. I know I missed calling you in, but man, I'm great. I'm glad to see you're charging on into the world and life. And
thank you, brother.
To your great daughter who graduated, man, you have a fantastic family, and you're a great American.
Amen to that. You're too kind.
I want the people to know. A lot of people call me a Trumpster, but I'm not really a Trumpster. I am an independent. I don't dislike Trump. I voted for him 3 times. I believe in his view of America, and what has happened during the last administration was just horrible. And
disgrace.
I just want the people to know I'm saddened for what has happened to Biden. And this
me
cancer.
too, Pat. Let me just say, I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate your service to the country as well. Your kind words are taken very seriously here. And you're right. I wish Biden was in better health. I'm happy to spar with him a little more and beat him up on the radio if he was in better health. I feel, bad saying Joe El Babosa Biden to somebody who's, not doing that great. Folks, we're coming right back. Pat, thanks for the call. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of our program. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and our phone number, if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ, and this hour, we're going to get into what's the latest with China, what's happening there. But first, I want to talk about some of the news of the day because there's plenty to discuss. And Megyn Kelly from the radio, from television, she did an interview with Jake Tapper. And let me tell you, she held his feet to the fire. She did an amazing job. I have a clip of it. Listen to this.
Knowing what I know now, obviously, I feel tremendous humility about my coverage, that Laura Trump interview, for example, et cetera. She saw something that I did not see at the time, 100%. And I own that. I did ask Joe Biden to be transparent about his health records in an interview in 2020. I did ask him about the fact that voters thought that he was not transparent at all. No.
He promised you that he would be transparent about his health records, and then he wasn't. And when you sat with him again,
at all.
including 1 month after the Jackie Walorski thing, you didn't ask him about it. You didn't follow up on the fact that he was falling up the stairs, that he was losing his train of thought regularly, that he was slurring, that he was incomprehensible, that he was getting lost on the White House lawn. You sat right across from him and you asked none of that, notwithstanding the fact that he had promised you he would be fully transparent about his health issues.
That's true, but I did ask him about his age and the fact that the American people had concluded that even though he said whenever anybody brought up the subject of his age, watch me. And I said, yes, they're watching you and they are concerned that you were too old for this job.
They're concerned that he is too old for the job. Again, Megyn Kelly, radio host, attorney, what else? Journalist, and of course, talk show host now. She did a great job there, holding Jake Tapper's feet to the fire. Of course, he's talking about his coverage of Joe Baboso Biden, the former president of the United States, and his health decline that was unreported by the legacy media. It was really a very, very good exchange. I recommend checking it out if you can in its entirety. I heard a good portion of it, and it really was good. But the gist of it is what we just played. And Tapper's doing a mea culpa so he can sell his book. You know, I guess so he can say, look, I was the only journalist from CNN that came out and said, look, we got this thing wrong. The conservatives were right. And he says that. He even says he called Lara Trump to apologize for that clip that you've seen probably about 100 times since last week. But all of this doesn't answer several questions, right? The questions of who knew what was going on? Who was perpetrating this? And I think there's a lot of people that think that it's a waste of time to talk about the auto pen. I don't think it's a waste of time. I think it's important, right? The auto pen becomes more important now than ever before. Because why? Because now we know that we were hiding information. You got all these prominent doctors coming out saying, hey, look, Joe Biden's sick. Yes, granted. Feel bad for him. Have sympathy. Yes. Have compassion. Yes. Do I expect the Democrats to lie? Yes, I do. But when you have pardons that were signed for a bunch of people that might have otherwise been prosecuted, and the mere understanding of a pardon is that you're accepting a pardon for something that you admit to being guilty of, right? That's the understanding of it. And this is where it's concerning, because if Joe Biden didn't have all his marbles, right, if his mental faculty wasn't in place, do these things count? I'm going to venture to say that they likely do, just because if there was no 26th Amendment, likely they're going to count. But I think that it's worth finding out, did he know he signed these things with his auto pen? Did he, in fact, sign them with the auto pen? Right? I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered here. And if I were President Trump, I would dig away at finding out, do these things count? Can I prosecute Joe? Can I prosecute the Biden brother? Can I go after Hunter? All these other people that got pardons in those final days. Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, the January 6th committee. Inquiring minds want to know. And I would like to know too. So, look, I get it. I get the importance of it. I don't know how much we're going to get out of it, but I think it's important to ask those questions and to see what the status is. Now, I have received a text message from a physician who runs or at one point in her career, ran a nursing home and has indicated to me that she has made a referral to Adult Protective Services on behalf of President Biden as a physician for investigation of possible elder abuse, naming his wife, his physician, and his chief of staff as possible perpetrators. Now, you have not heard that in the news yet because I don't think anybody's saying that but me, because this was sent to me directly. I'm not giving you all the details on this because I was trying to get this person on the phone, and I think they may have fallen asleep. But as we get more information on that, I will be happy to give you the rest of that scoop. But if you hear it from somewhere else tomorrow, you can always say, look, I heard it here first. And I don't know, again, I don't know where that goes. But it's good to see people are trying to do the right thing on something that really does have major implications. I am a cynic, and in my cynicism, I can be very skeptical. And I'm still skeptical. I don't know that anything good will come from any of these things. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't fight. It doesn't mean we shouldn't ask the questions that need to be asked and take the appropriate actions and the steps we need to take. That's just a matter of fact, right? You have to do the right thing. So just wanted to bring you up to speed on that. A New York physician filing a complaint for elder abuse on behalf of Joel Baboso Biden. More on that mañana. Now, I want to talk about a few other things because Secretary Bessent was on Meet the Press yesterday. I think it was Meet the Press. And he was talking about, not yesterday, Sunday, excuse me, his position on what's going on with China, indicating that, you know, we're in a better place than we were and we can continue our conversations from the posture that we've created with these mutual deductions on tariffs. And I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to get along with your enemies. It's a good thing to try and make progress on these issues. So we're going to talk about what that looks like straight ahead as well. Plus your calls, your thoughts and opinions. We still have some calls on hold. Definitely getting to you momentarily. Of course, the tradition on this program, open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations, everybody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? That's right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Trump had said previously, and I'm quoting from him, China needs to make a deal with the U.S. We don't have to make a deal with them. So why did the United States back down?
Neither side backed down. Both sides realized that this, as I had said, that it was unsustainable. So we had the equivalent of an embargo, which is not what either side wanted. It was this constant tit-for-tat escalation. So both sides brought the tariffs down by 115%. So for 2025, we have increased tariffs on China by 30%. They have increased them by 10 on us. We now have a mechanism in place to continue talks.
That is Secretary Scott Bessent. And let me do the math. They raised tariffs by 10%. We've increased them by 30. Sounds like we're winning. But hey, who's keeping score? Okay, I am. Anyway, I want to get into this with our guest, Kerry Lutz. He's the host of Financial Survival Network. He's a best-selling author, and he's got a book called The World According to Martin Armstrong. And his website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Kerry Lutz, welcome.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be on with you. I remember, I think you were on my old hometown station that I listened to from the time I was a little kid, WABC.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Started my career in radio on WABC, my hometown, too. And I absolutely had some great times there with some great people. And now I got a lot more people and, a whole bunch more states, which is really a lot of fun. Kerry Lutz, thank you, sir. Let's talk about this. Your thoughts on the position that Trump put China in, because I think Secretary Bessent was guarding his words to be diplomatic, but it seemed clear to me, based on a lot of indication from a lot of people that are in the know, information I was getting, China clearly capitulated here because they could not continue to have their factories shut down and their people in an uproar. Your thoughts?
Exactly right. You got to understand, when you're dealing in diplomacy, when you're dealing, especially with the Chinese, you don't want to make them lose face in public, because the Asian mind, losing face is probably worse than death. And so, of course, and I was really impressed by the Treasury Secretary, how delicately and how nuanced he handled it. But the real agreement isn't about aluminum and soybeans and iPhone cases. That's the cover. The real issue is there's a list of things that China has been doing ever since we granted them most favored nation status. And they have basically been in economic warfare with the United States for 40 years. And in the beginning, it didn't matter. They were weak. But as they got stronger, they inflicted more and more damage upon our economy, upon our society. For them, the fentanyl export boom for them, it's a way to make money. They love that. It's a way to inflict damage upon the United States, killing hundreds of thousands of people. And to them, it's payback for the opium wars of the mid to late 1800s. And you have to look at our relations with China not through, gee, we sell them this, they sell us that, and there's a surplus. Yeah, that is the net result of a policy of economic warfare that's been aimed at this country, whether it's IP theft, all sorts of things. The way that they, we don't really know what the real trade deficit is with China, because to help obscure it a bit, they've been transshipping goods to places like Thailand, Malaysia, even Mexico and Canada. That's part of Trump's gripe with them, is they've been facilitating. All they do is they get the Chinese goods, they take the Chinese label off, if it even has one, and they put made in Canada, made in Mexico. They ship it off to us, no tariffs, no nothing. And then you've got this other thing called the de minimis exception, where originally it was anything under $800 there was no duty on, but they were abusing that as well. And they're, even discount, because they're considered a developing country, they get discount postage from the United States. I mean, this is madness here. And and then we go to the issues of Taiwan, the issue of Russia, Ukraine, because look, if China stopped buying Russia's oil, if they abided by the embargo, Russia would be done in about 3 or 4 months. And in my opinion, there's an underlying agreement covering all these items, as well as rampant intellectual property theft, supporting Cuba, supporting Venezuela, and of course the fentanyl issue. I think you've already started to see they're closing down fentanyl producers and precursor manufacturers. So the 90 days isn't a cooling off period. It's a period where China demonstrates with their actions that they are going to comply with this agreement that doesn't exist to the general public, but exists between the two governments, because that's what, diplomacy always is done in secret. And I agree with you and your sources. It's total capitulation because they have no choice, because the fact is they sell way more goods to the United States than the numbers reflect. And if you get rid of the United States, they lose scale, they lose economies of scale. All the goods that they sell to Europe and the rest of the world get way more expensive because they can't spread the costs through as much product. So take all that into consideration. The tripwires, in my opinion, are you haven't seen them mention anything about Taiwan that's been published. Maybe they're saying it in their own press, but they're not making bellicose statements towards Taiwan. And, the Panama Canal is another tripwire, even though it isn't part of this agreement, it is. And basically, we just took the Panama Canal back without firing a shot. That was a big deal because that was Chinese expansionism on display and their attempt at world domination. And you take all these things into consideration, you see that they're backing off. And they don't have any choice because their economy is collapsing.
That was a mouthful, but I think you're 100% right. Kerry Lutz from the Financial Survival Network. I think you're right. China is not firing on all cylinders right now because they're not able to, and they're trying to play catch up. And President Trump has, I think, very aptly tried to address a number of problems that we have with China through this deal. And I don't have time to play the clip, but the media asked him today, the Mexicans say that you're helping militarily with the attacks on the cartels and fentanyl facilities. And Trump, quite frankly, says, yep, I am. I'm helping them. And they asked for help. We said, sure, we'd love to. and the United States military and federal law enforcement, they are out there in Mexico at the request of the Mexican government, or maybe a little cajoling from Trump. Either way, we're in Mexico blowing stuff up, breaking these facilities down as part of what you're talking about. So spot on analysis, Kerry Lutz. Let everybody know how they can follow you and learn more about the work you're doing.
Sure thing. The website where all my archives is, I've done over 10,000 podcasts in 14 years, is financialsurvivalnetwork.com. You can also find my book, The World According to Martin Armstrong, Conversations with a Master Forecaster, a guy who basically has explained all of this.
Outstanding. Check it out at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Kerry Lutz, I appreciate it. Hope to have you back on really soon. Godspeed to you, sir. And amigos, we come back and we're going to talk with the whistleblower who blew the COVID scandal in New York and her allegations against Jill Biden. That's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
First of all, of course, we wish the best for the former president's health. And, it sounds pretty serious, but hopefully he makes the right recovery. Like I will say, whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job. And that's no, that you can separate the desire for him to have the right health outcome with the recognition that whether it was doctors or whether there were staffers around the former president, I don't think he was able to do a good job for the American people. And that's not politics. That's not because I disagreed with him on policy. That's because I don't think that he was in good enough health. In some ways, I blame him less than I blame the people around him. And why didn't the American people have a better sense of his health picture? Why didn't the American people have more accurate information about what he was actually dealing with? This is serious stuff. And this is the guy who carries around the nuclear football for the world's largest nuclear arsenal. This is not child's play, and we can pray for good health, but also recognize that if you're not in good enough health to do the job, you shouldn't be doing the job.
That is Vice President J.D. Vance on Air Force Two just yesterday giving his reaction to this bombshell news over the weekend that Joe Biden has cancer. And in my opinion, that is nothing more than him trying to change the subject. And I know that's tough to say. We, of course, want to be respectful of Joe Biden's health. But the bigger question is, a lot of people knew Joe Biden wasn't well, and everything J.D. Vance said is accurate. I'm going to add to that list the Vice President of the United States and every single cabinet member who has the ability to invoke the 25th Amendment and didn't. Why didn't they? Were they in the dark, or were they part of this cover-up? These are all questions that we need to ask and hopefully get an answer to. I don't expect anybody to be forthright, from the opposing party, but questions need to be asked and hopefully answered nonetheless. Now, back when I was a radio host in New York during the COVID debacle, there was a heroic physician who was an administrator of a nursing home in Westchester County who saw an executive order come in from the governor, then Andrew Cuomo, saying that COVID-positive patients had to be held in facilities with senior citizens, with folks in nursing homes. And, of course, being the responsible professional that she is, she said, this is insane. This is going to hurt our people. People are going to die. And she blew the whistle on it and had her organization pen an op-ed that was carried in one of the big papers and did her own due diligence to call into talk radio and share this on the Mark Levin show. It's when I made her acquaintance. Her name is Dr. Elaine Healy, and I think she's a hero. And she's done something heroic yet again, this time weighing in defense of Joe Biden, because like J.D. Vance just said, where he said, in many ways, I hold him less responsible than I hold those around him, physicians, aides, his wife, and others. These are questions that need to be asked and answered. Dr. Elaine Healy, welcome back.
Oh, hello. Nice to speak with you.
Likewise. So what's going on? What have you done?
Well, first of all, I think, we are all sort of collectively reeling from the realizations of what was going on between the announcement of his prostate cancer in an advanced stage, and that came on the heels of the release of Special Counsel Robert Hur's interview, and all of that following Jake Tapper's book. So we're just hearing a lot about the now belated recognition of his cognitive decline and the fact that the media certainly covered it up. And as you and others have mentioned, so did many around him. And it occurred to me that in addition to it being scandalous and something that we need to investigate, that this is actually an example of elder abuse. And elder abuse is a significant social issue, and it's defined in different ways. One way is an intentional act or failure to act by a caregiver or another person that's in a relationship to that individual, in which that individual has an expectation of trust, and that causes a risk of harm or actual harm to that person. So what we have here, and I mean, it's obvious, I think we would all recognize elder abuse that was physical in nature, and at least we hope we would recognize it, bruising, fractures, and so forth, or social isolation or neglect and failure to give food or that kind of thing. But what seems to have happened here is a more subtle form of elder abuse. It's nonetheless recognized and defined, and that is the exploitation of an individual for the furtherance of the abuser's financial or personal or perhaps political gain. And this appears to be what has happened to him. And there's, it seems to me, potentially multiple people involved. I just, to name a few, I think we can all question the First Lady, the former First Lady, and her
Dr. Jill Biden.
Dr. Jill. Pushing him to, really beyond his capabilities. Clearly, a truly loving spouse would not want their beloved to be doing things or attempting things or subject to things that put them at risk or stress or, subject them to, undue dangers and so forth. And yet there she was pushing him and you heard her, after that debate, Joe, what a great job you did. And what was that? I mean, is she really just manipulating him based on his utter dependency on her, for her own gain or power, just political advantage, financial, we don't know, but certainly she didn't seem to have his best interests at heart. You have to wonder about this physician. How could anybody miss the diagnosis of dementia? I mean, we all saw it. The lay public saw it. It was clear that he was not, didn't have capacity, and he was suffering from, he was bewildered, he was forgetful, he was lost, literally. And yet somehow his doctor, who one would want to think and seems like to be a very competent man and caring man, you would think that he would have noticed that. He issued him a clean bill of health. This whole prostate issue is another debacle. And, he had a responsibility to protect this man. Finally, you have, I wonder about Robert Herr as an attorney that actually came forth and more or less declared that he was incapacitated and yet didn't act according to the American Bar Association standards of recognizing that this was a person who was susceptible to undue influence. And here that man just sat on his hands for the next 18 months, and all these executive orders are being signed and pardons and so forth. I mean, what was he had to know that that man wasn't capable of that. And then then of course his staff, all the staff that's around him. So basically and it hit me that this was really a case of elder abuse. And I thought, well, what do you do when you suspect elder abuse? Is you are supposed to report it and to Adult Protective Services.
Right.
So I went online and I figure that he's residing in Delaware now, and I went online to the APS in Delaware, and I reported this as he being the potential subject of abuse by way of exploitation, and neglect on the part of his physician and family members at this point to provide the basic health care that he needed. And I invoked Jill Biden, Kevin O'Connor, and his former chief of staff, Jeffrey Zientis, as potential perpetrators.
Folks, we're on with Dr. Elaine Healy. She's a physician out of New York, used to run a nursing home. And this is a breaking news item where she contacted Delaware authorities to let them know that in her expert medical opinion, she felt that this might be an instance of elder abuse, as she's graciously explaining to us. And I'm grateful, Dr. Healy, that you did this, because too many people, I think, in that situation were sitting on their hands, and we need people like you that have taken action in the past and have taken action here yet again. Hopefully we'll get some results on this.
Yes, they have a duty. They have to investigate. if it's reported. That's my understanding, Rich, that if it's reported and a credible report. Now, I am not directly involved in his care. I didn't personally witness it, so they may dismiss it. But I made a pretty strong case, and let's see what they do with it. They should do the right thing. They should investigate.
Yeah, well, just for the mere fact that you're on the radio now talking about it, it's on the record. And if they don't, somebody will bring it up and say, well, that lady who was a doctor from New York, she made a complaint. Why didn't you follow up with that? So I'm guessing that they will likely do it. And we're heard very widely on WDEL in that part of the country. So my hope is that Joe Biden will get the due process that he deserves, of course, and the medical treatment he deserves. Dr. Elaine Healy, thank you so much for the call. Thanks for breaking your story with us, and thanks for everything you do.
Okay. Thank you, Rich.
Oh, my pleasure. Keep in touch. Godspeed to you. And amigos, we take a pause right here. We'll come right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we go to the phones. Let's go to Jason calling us from Preston, Connecticut. WLAD in the building. Go right ahead, Jason.
I feel like that they're just knocking Joe Biden off so they can cover up all the pardons that he signed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somebody might be inclined to believe that. Not me, only because this guy was 82, and we've seen him decline over the last several years. He was in bad shape coming in. He left in even worse shape than he was when he was on his way out. So I don't think they're necessarily trying to get rid of him. I think they're really just trying to cover up the fact that they did so many things while he was in office that he honestly may not have known he was doing. And nothing will, in my opinion, nothing will happen. I don't think that we can retroactively do anything. All we can do is be grateful that we're not in that situation anymore and that we've got El Trompito Donaldus Magnus. Jason, thanks for the call, brother. Shout out to WLAD. Let us continue. Nancy, Timwa, Iowa, KBIZ. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, I wanted to say that you was talking about abuse by law enforcement. I went through abuse by law for a period of time, and I protested them. And I was told that I ran them out of town. But here's the thing is I get along with law enforcement now. I'll go out of my way to get along with them.
Yeah.
And I commend the ones that came in here, new ones that showed me that they were a different kind of cop. So I just wanted to say that. So.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate. And you know what's true about what you're saying is I think by and large, the vast majority of people in law enforcement are there to do the right thing. And my message to that minority of people that are not doing the right thing, and it's not just law enforcement, really, to me, it's public service, right? You've got politicians that are, there to do the right thing, and then you've got a handful that are there not to do the right thing. All these people that want to abuse their authority, do the right thing. People are watching, and eventually it's going to catch up to you. That's my thought on that. Nancy, I'm glad you've worked it out with the police. And amigos, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Idaho, California, 833-482-5337. What happened to my buddy Paul from WHIZ? I don't see him up there, but I got my other buddy Paul up there. So we're going to come to you guys straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
No, you should own your property free and clear. I think to say that someone that's been in their house for 35 years just has to keep ponying up money, that is not. You don't own your home if that's the case.
That's Governor DeSantis of Florida. I want to go to the phones. Paul, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ, Speed Round. Go for it, brother.
Hey, good evening, Rich. Yeah, I'm in that situation right now, Rich. 32 years in this home. We're ready to pay it off in about 6 months or so. And I'm wondering why I should have to pay. Thank you. I'm wondering why I have to pay taxes on something that I own. And that Comey, what a dirtbag. He's a douche, man. But anyway, that's what I'm wondering. I just don't like it. And then my insurance. I've been paying that for 30-some years.
That's a whole show, the insurance. But as far as the property tax, right, for many places where, there are schools, they use property taxes to fund schools, and they feel like that's a collective good for everybody. So everybody has to pay school tax, which vis-a-vis is property tax. And, of course, some places you pay separately for public sewer if you don't have a septic tank. And in some places it's included. And, other things like, police and fire and all those other things that come out of that. So there's a number of things like paved roads. But then there are places with septic tanks and dirt roads. Like my family has a farm like that. And, yeah, the taxes are lower, but there's still taxes. So you're right. I agree. There should be a very minimal tax. And like other countries, once you pay off the bank, it's yours. That's it. You don't got to keep paying because then you don't really own it. I agree with the governor. Paul, good to hear from you, brother. Thank you for your thoughts. Let's go to Rich, Redwood City, California, calling us from, let's see, what's that? KNCO country. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think we're on that station. Go ahead.
KSFO, yeah.
No, we're not on KSFO.
It's 810.
All right, go ahead, quickly.
Yeah, I was appointed at Ronald Reagan when he was knee deep in. He became known as Mr. Deer in the Headlights hook. Remember?
Oh yeah,
So,
but he would constantly say, "But I forget, and he was famous. I remember being a little kid and seeing that stuff. But it was the end of the road for him. And again, same thing. I think if he were signing all these things, and there was a big deal about it then, but. This, I think, is more egregious because he eventually came out and said that, he was ill with that. Biden here is saying he has prostate cancer. He's not saying that there's something wrong with his brain. And clearly that's the issue I think we all have. Rich in Redwood City, California, thank you for the call, brother. I appreciate it. And let me see Well, Paul in Boise wanted to say that Biden's auto pen should annul judges that he nominated. Yeah, we'd first have to, I guess, annul his presidential authority. And I think that's a far cry from where we're going to end up. Gary in Colfax, you're running for president. Good luck to you, my friend. And amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I am Rich Valdez.